Hi, everyone. If it's okay with you, we'll wait for just 2 more minutes for people that are still trying to connect to figure out their technical difficulties. And then we will start. I hope you are doing well. I have now reached the stage in my life when I'm excited I can go out without a mask. And I'm really looking forward to a day when I won't have to say, can you hear me? Yeah, so I'm also quite grateful for this webinar as it forced me to kind of change from my usual home attire and sweatpants into an actual jeans and t-shirt and even a blazer. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those people that is baking banana bread in this quarantine or learning to play ukulele, but you know, life. I'm also not used yet after this 3 months to talk to the camera without, participants in front of me, and I have not yet discovered a passion for Insta influencing or vlogging. So just to see if there are not robots but living creatures on the other side, can you write in the chat where are you currently spending your last days of quarantine? Also, this will be the only icebreaker. I know some of you know me also as a trainer, but today I have to inform you with deep regret that there will be no energizers unless anyone specifically asks for it. Oh, Luna, I see the disappointment in the energizers. Joanna as well. I feel like, I'm ganged up with my board members. Don't worry, the next event we will have, there will be so many energizers to compensate for, the Easter seminar. Enora, if you want to lead one, you're very much welcome to do so. Okay. I think that we could start. Okay, so everyone, very, very warmly welcome to our second webinar called Insights into the Life and Activism of Young Roma, which is actually another activity of Yen Digital Summer. So just to quickly go into a bit of introduction before we dive into the topic, from the technical side, we will have a talk today with our guests. But even though this is called a webinar, it doesn't mean that you can't engage. You're very much welcome to write any comments, reflections that you have on the topic, but specifically do write and ask questions, as we will also try to put as many as possible, either in between or at the end. And I think our guest, Mariya, today is also very excited to answer some of your questions. But how do you actually do that? To make our lives easier, there is a possibility down there that Enora already used, a question mark. So if you click on that question mark, you can actually type in the question and then send it, and it will be presented to us as a question, and we will have a better flow who is asking what. Also, you're encouraged very much to add question either at the beginning or in the middle. You don't have to wait till the end of our talk. But if you want to change from a question to the normal, reflection, then you click on another box next to it. There's a green chat box, and you can also then use it like this. So I do see that there's quite some members from our network, and I'm very excited about that, as we do miss every participant of our usual events. But I also see that there are some people that might not be familiar with Yen and what Yen is or who Yen is. So before we go into the topic, I would just like to shortly say that Yen actually stands for Youth of European Nationalities, and it's the largest network of youth organizations of autochthonous national and linguistic minorities in Europe. And what we do is we represent the interests of young people from these minorities. and currently have 41 member organizations from 18 different countries represented. In Yen. Also, we have been founded in 1984 in North Schleswig on Knivsberg. And since then, we have been advocating for minority rights, for the interests of minorities, and with a special focus on young people. I know that, the date of our founding is 1984, and in some of the countries, this means we are not young anymore. But I'm here to ensure you that we are very much a very youth-oriented organization, and not only oriented, but we are also led and run completely by young people, which means that in board and in the office, we have young people that are implementing and determining what kind of activities for youth we will be doing. In the pre-COVID-19 kind of era, we usually had 3 to 4 larger events during the year. But, unfortunately, in 2020, for those of you who might have just woken up from a 3-month sleep, there have been some signs of apocalypse. I'm sorry and regret that I'm the one to break this news to you. But because of some health crisis, we were forced to actually cancel two of these seminars. And as an alternative, we decided that we would like to go online. So till June, we will be running a set of activities called Yen Digital Summers, and a summer under the motto of Think Beyond Borders. And why we did this is basically we want to keep our network alive. We want to, have active members, connected members that also kind of reflect on the current situation and also reflect on the challenges that national, ethnic, and linguistic minorities are facing. What kind of activities we have, I will briefly mention now, and then at the end, if you come to the end of the webinar, you will be able to learn more. So in addition to the e-training that we will have next week, we will also have, and we already organized one discussion round for young people from our network to actually self-reflect a bit more and connect with other minority members and discuss certain topics deeper than this kind of webinars. And then the third one is this kind of webinar, that's actually a place where we invite different guests from different expertise to actually broaden our knowledge on some of the topics. In the first seminar, you already had a pleasure to meet my co-board Jakub, who was leading the seminar. Today, I will be the one moderating it. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Pia Šlogar, and I am the Vice President for External Relations in Yen, which means that I take care of dissemination of the message of diversity. So Yen is not the only one fighting for social inclusion, but there are also non-minority youth organizations that can become passionate about minority rights. And the second role I have is that I'm the representative of Yen in the Advisory Council on Youth of the Council of Europe, which means that we're bringing kind of minority topics and amplifying minority youth voices on the more policy-making level. Okay, enough of this intro, I think. I'm very, very happy to give you a bit more context on what's happening today. So for those of you who don't know, every year, actually, the Schwarzkopf Foundation Young Europe from Germany announces nominations for young Europeans who have kind of distinguished themselves in an exemplary manner concerning their commitment, their dedication to promoting inclusive societies and kind of supporting the international understanding and the integration of Europe. And we are very, very pleased that our guest of the second webinar today is actually this year's Young European of the Year, Mariya Atanasova. So Mariya, very, very warmly welcome.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm very pleased to be here and to have this conversation with you. So it's really nice here.
Thank you for joining us. But before we really dive into the topic and try to explore very deep issues, I would say one of the main reasons the foundation actually chose you as this year's winner is, and I quote here, your commitment to fight for more visibility and participation of young Roma. So at the beginning, could you just tell us a little bit how you actually came to be involved in this cause? How did your first steps in youth field and activism actually start?
Actually, I started to be more active when I was in high school. My steps in activism started there because I met a lot of youth organizations. I met um, a lot of Romani organizations who are working with other Roma people and Roma youth. So I started as a volunteer firstly, then I participated in a few mentorship programs, and this is how I became really involved and engaged with Roma youth and social work and volunteering work.
The next question I had, and it's usually the first question that journalists also pose to Olympic gold medal winners. So I will follow this example and ask this quite cliche question on how did it actually feel when you were named a Young European of the Year, and did it change anything for you?
How did I feel? I was really happy. I am really happy. Firstly, because it is recognition of my work, of my contribution, and actually all the effort that we Roman youth are doing to change the situation for our communities. And I think it's really important to be proud here as a Roma also, and that I can to that I can represent my community and all the Roma youth that are working and willing to change the situation.
Quite a big pressure, I would say. But I know this kind of advocacy efforts, for example, for Roma communities, especially now, had to change probably in the light of this health crisis. But nevertheless, in your mandate as a young European, what are some of the priorities and goals that you would like to focus on and maybe achieve till the end of the year?
Actually, this pandemic situation changed a lot of things, but still, in my goals is to promote our Romani cause that we have, and to send political messages. I think it's really important Roma people to be represented in different levels, also in political level. And one of my goals is to send political messages and to catch the political attention.
Okay. So I know you're also a bit familiar with Jan. We also had one of the minority messengers meeting you in Bulgaria as well. And at the organization, we are very much committed to keep fighting, of course, for Roma rights. But since we might have listeners who, for example, do not know much about the topic, can you just introduce us a bit more? Or what are some of the things that, in your opinion, everyone should know about Roma communities in Europe, and then maybe Roma communities in Bulgaria in particular?
I think that everyone should know that Romani people we can contribute a lot. We have a lot of potential, and we are not different than the other communities. And I think that we are not different, and we have a lot of potential. This is a thing that everyone should remember. It's really simple, and it's to think as a human to other human, and to all the communities. We are all the same. Of course, we have specific problems in different countries, but I think the thing that everyone should know is that we have a potential and we can contribute.
That's a very nice message. But to go maybe deeper also on the other side, these are, as you also mentioned, quite difficult times for most of us. And I would say also especially for marginalized and vulnerable groups whose we could say that the rights completely got eroded, and the crisis has exposed also this kind of enormous gaps in our society that should be and need to be addressed. So from the Roma youth perspective, what would you say is currently the most pressing issue that Romani youth is facing?
Oh, here I can say so many things. From
Unfortunately.
starting, yeah, not having
Mm,
equal opportunities, from education to the different and difficult conditions that Romani kids and youth are living. But I think mainly it's the anti-Gypsyism that a lot of youths are facing in their daily life in institutions as school, universities, and even in society in their social environment. That's a problem that actually we have to focus really on.
mm-mm. Have you had, as an individual, any specific methods on how you fought, for example, this kind of anti-Romani discriminational practices, or do you see them also maybe in your university, in your studies?
Firstly, I always say that I'm Roma and I'm from the Romani community because it's always good to have people around me to know. Because sometimes I can hear something that is based on prejudice and stereotypes, but I always say something, and I think that's the way because if they see me as an example that I'm Roma and I'm there in these institutions, and I'm not any different than the other people, so I think that's the way to handle it.
Mm, leading with example.
Of course, yeah.
We also kind of mentioned before that we are observing this kind of huge violation of human rights, the kind of spread of far right wing nationalistic rhetoric that don't acknowledge or any kind of diversity, that are driven by hate speech, xenophobia, hatred, discrimination, as you said, but also stigmatization kind of towards minorities. And either on one side, they find themselves, the minorities, either threatened, or on the other, kind of becoming this instrumentalized medium for politicians to use. So at the end, we do believe that, especially in these times, it is very much essential that as young members of society, we do need to remain vigilant. We need to speak up about clear violations of human rights, draw attention to it, draw attention to minority rights. But for you, example, what does it even mean for you to be an active citizen?
For me, to be an active citizen means firstly to be aware what is happening in my community, what is happening in my city, in my country, and in general in Europe. It's important to be politically aware also, and to try to be more critical to our representatives, to our leaders, and to try to also contribute in our society in any way to be more critical and to contribute. I think it's a key to be an active citizen.
Mm. Jakob also asked a question that is maybe quite connected to the topic that we started a bit. And he's asking, where do you actually see the origins of this discrimination against Roma people?
Uh, I think we have a lot of segregation and a lot of isolation of the Romani people. In We are living in cities. I mean, but usually Romani people are living separated from other communities, and also they're going to schools who are segregated, and people don't meet each other, don't mix up, and usually in families who are not from with Roma background, we don't know each other, and actually kids are
Mm,
raising without know each other. If we know each other better, so we will understand what is the situation. And if we are living in the same places, if you are going in the same school, I think we will not have this discrimination and anti-Semitism and prejudice, because we will know each other well. We will know each other better.
Okay. How would you then see, for example, the role of young people when it comes strictly to fighting against discrimination?
Firstly, to share the good practices, the good examples. But I think the most important thing is always to react, to stand up, and to say something. When we see something that is a stereotype of prejudice, when we hear something in our daily life, in our daily conversation with our friends, in our family, in our communities, always to say something because this can break the stigmatization and the stereotypes. So it's always good to have a position and to say it. I mean, not only to about when it's coming to about the Romani community, but to other communities also. It's always good to react and to say something that can break it.
It goes also very much aligned with the famous quote that if you're staying silent, then you're on the side of oppressor, right? And if there is any time to do anything and they react, as you already highlighted as well, is to do it now.
Yeah.
In regards to also what you've been talking about, active citizenship and standing up, do you think that then the young people's position is different, or they have the different responsibility than other age groups maybe in society?
Oh, maybe young people, as the young people, we should be more proactive, and we have to be more aware what is happening, and we have to be the proactive side and to want to learn from other communities, from other generations. But we should be the proactive side, I think.
So kind of leading the fight on the ground as well,
Yeah.
in the local.
Yeah.
When we're already talking about this fight for equality and dignity, do you think that it's something that needs to really happen on kind of the local grassroots level, or more in an international European context?
Oh, I think that that must be a priority in all of the levels because that is the way that's going to work. If it's missing in any of them, so we cannot have a full circle of implementation and monitoring, and we cannot learn what are our mistakes and how to make better in a second way. And I think that should be a priority in any of these levels too. That's the way that's gonna work.
Exactly. So having this kind of bottom up, but then also high down approach, I would say, and working everywhere, at the same time.
Yeah.
But do you think that there has been shown maybe enough solidarity towards Roma rights and towards Roma communities, in your view, from the side of Europe, for example, and from the European institutions?
I think that the European institutions are trying, but I think we need more actions, and we need to see that European representatives are trying harder. The Romani people are European, and we are part of the European society. We should feel in that way. We should see the actions and the solidarity. And I think that all of the European representatives should understand that Romani people are Europeans, because in this day I can say that there is also a lot of European representatives who are spreading hate messages and having racist attitudes. We have an example from Bulgaria, even a political representatives from Bulgaria who are in the European Parliament, and who are even in this hard time as the Corona crisis. So they're using for spreading hate messages.
Exactly. So also being accountable towards politicians who have this platform in the media as well, and to spread the message of solidarity instead of message of hate speech, I would say. But if we're already in the institutions, what I'm observing, for example, when Yen is observing that when we're talking about international institutions, European institutions that try to promote minority rights, youth rights, also Roma rights, that there's this feeling or belief that, okay, this is the problem, this is the plan, and in 5 years we will fix the problems, and then we will move to another, minority onto another issue. And it's not something like, it's not how it works, basically, when it comes to minority communities, because when you're empowering young people, you need to empower constantly and new generations coming in. So it is a continuous work and not just a 3 to 5 year plan. So in your opinion, I would be very interested to first hear whose responsibility is it? Is it to create kind of conditions for young people, and especially Roma youth, to be able to express themselves? Is it more of a European institutional issue that kind of forgets after 3 years about, a minority, and then puts the pressure on the civic society, or who do you think is here responsible?
I think that responsible is firstly the European institutions, and secondly the national and the local governments and authorities, because so everything should start from the European level, but it should be followed from the national and the local local levels.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a good practice or good monitoring of the work, so I think that then we will have a result.
So having civic society organization also keep pushing for institutions to basically provide the platforms for young Roma as well. Mm-hmm. And Michal had a question maybe related to this. Do you believe that the political emancipation of the Roma will help solve our problems?
I think that that will help definitely, and I think that we need more political representation, and especially we need to create as soon as possible more young people. I mean, like movement of politically aware young Roma people. More political representation, I think, will be helpful, and that maybe can solve our problems. And if we are good represented, if we are well represented there, so we will have a position in the places that the decisions are made, and that will happen with us, not without us. Because unfortunately, in this moment we don't have enough political representation. I mean, even not in European institutions or in local level and government. And we need definitely we need, and I think that will be helpful, really.
I think one of the things that I maybe observed with what you were saying, having equality also on the political level, is that when there are Roma politicians or politicians with Roma identifying as Roma or with Roma background, then the other politicians and parties kind of come to them only about the Roma issues. But this is not kind of equality. I think like real change will be made when you come to a minority representative also with other issues. So what do you think about, climate change? What do you think about youth participation? What do you think about this and this topics, and not just strictly Roma topics as well? So I think it's very important that you're underlying that we do need to not only increase the quality, but also quantity. So there will be different perspectives in the parliament as well, and in the governmental positions.
Yeah, definitely, because I mean, you can be a Roma, but you can be a specialist, and you can have a different opinion on any different topics, and you can be really good at it. And you're not only a Roma, and you cannot only be good at the Roma topics, of course.
Yeah. In connection to this as well, do you see anything that should be taken and implemented now, and also in the future, to maybe foster and engage more Roma youth and encourage them?
I think that everything should start from the education, from early age, and from education. I think that the segregation and the segregated schools, it is a big problem. If you have better education, and also if you have more opportunities for young Roma people to be involved in a political level, so there will be the connection, and we will have more young people who are active, who are politically involved, and who are really engaged with the problems of the community. But I think everything that should start definitely from the education, better education, so better political involvement and engagement with the community. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I very strongly agree with you, especially now when we see how pushed on the margins the Roma children are when it comes to education, when things are coming online, and a lot of young people in general, but especially marginalized communities, don't have access maybe to internet, don't have access to computer, to basic technicalities that for some people are evident, and for others not so much. So yeah, has there been any change in your opinion in Bulgaria, maybe in regards to education and stopping the segregation and giving more opportunities?
About the segregation, I cannot say that there is an improvement. You said about now that Romani kids have other difficulties during the online education, and yes, here we have a lot of problem with it, because we can start with the conditions that some of the Romani kids are living, and if you're not having the basic needs, the basics of like running water and electricity. So how to think about a computer devices or internet. So there is a lot of problems in lower levels, and unfortunately there is not any improvement in segregation, because still we have a Romani settlements and places that only Roma people are living, and only Roma kids are raising there.
But if we maybe switch a conversation a bit to see also the positive effects, because we were talking about also how young Roma communities are, and maybe for the people here, listeners, just some fact statistical is that the average age of Roma people in the European Union is actually 25 years old. And if we have a comparison, an average age of non-Roma people is 40. So no, you did not hear this wrong. It's 25-40, which is a very huge generational gap if we would be talking one person 25, one person 30. But then it also means that there's a huge youth potential and a huge young force in the Roma communities to change the world. But then on the in many countries we do observe that we have this kind of Roma councils that are very much dominated by older Roma men, and then on the other hand we have this mainstream non-minority youth organization, mainstream national youth councils that don't involve young Roma people, and somehow Roma youth again is completely left out and pushed to the margins. So how do you see this mobilization of young Roma and Roma youth organizations, how to strengthen the leadership, the participation, and then also indirectly the self-representation of young Roma?
That's a really complicated question, and maybe not only one way to achieve it. But I think maybe a good practice would be if from the European level there is specific programs that includes Roma people, because we have a specific problems in different levels with Romani involvement. So to have programs that include Romani youth and maybe more cooperation with Romani youth, so I think that would be great. And also engaging NGO organizations and government organizations that are working with Romani communities, with Romani youth, because they know the situation, they know the problems, and that can be a platform that we can connect the political institutions, and we can have more Roman youth participation.
I think you're also exposing quite an important message that, you know, nothing should happen without Roma youth, and about Roma youth, we are not, you can't not involve then the Roma youth, and just, you know, having these conversations on upper European international levels and then having no self-representation. It's a bit naive, I would say, also to think that you can solve the issues and challenges of communities without understanding and, you know, having these messages coming straight from the young people.
Yeah.
Christina is also asking here, is there a strong youth network of young Roma people across Europe, and how is actually the cooperation of the minority across countries functioning? And she is also talking strictly from her perspective from Albania, that she's seeing some movements from young Roma, but the situation is still quite bad, and also clear violations of human rights. So she would be really interested to hear if you have any information how the cooperation between the communities in different countries are going on.
Actually, I know that in every country there is a youth organization, but only they're working in a local level. In international level, I know a few organizations who are cooperating with other national organizations with in a different countries. I can say that as an example, Pirena Mensa, which is a Hungarian youth Romani organization, and they have a good practices to gather young Roma people from different countries, and I participated in their seminars and festivals. Where I met a lot of Romani people and Romani activists from different countries, and that's because now we have a network, but I think there are only a few youth international organizations. One of them is Pirena Mensa, and I know another one is the Ergo Network, I think. But and from my perspective, I think that's a really good practice to have a strong international youth organization, including Romani youth and gathering Romani youth, because this is how the cooperation can happen, and because we all have same problems in our countries, and we can exchange good practices, and we can share our experience together.
Maybe in regards also to this, I strongly believe that minorities should not be the only ones fighting for minority rights. I think minorities need to find their own voice. They need to have, you know, a strong minority identity, but then they also need to have space to freely express this kind of identity. And if we want to, you know, achieve equal and socially inclusive society, then just minorities fighting for minority rights, we won't be able to do this. So what would you say is the role or the importance of this alliance building across different kind of communities?
I think different communities should support each other. We are really strong as a community, but we have to understand the problems of other communities and supporting each other. I think that's the only way that we can make the society better and better conditions for all the communities. As an example, I can say that I'm a Roma and I'm a Roma activist, but also I always support different communities
Mm,
as a LGBTQI community, and also I'm working as a volunteer and as a coordinator in a social enterprise that works with kids deprived from parental care. So it is important to support every community that has similar problems, so like isolation and discrimination, and that's the only way for supporting other communities. We, I, I think that we don't have to be related directly with
mm,
all of the communities to support each other. We don't need to. We have to be just really involved, and if you want to make our society better, we should support all the different communities and all
mm.
those in need that need help
I
and
think
support.
that was a great call for solidarity and empathy. Mylis has a very concrete question. So, what do you think should other youth minority organizations do to support Roma people?
Um, if you have um, some programs or maybe initiatives specifically to call for Roma youth, for Roma activists, maybe to have their opinion also, their voice and their contribution also. That can help to connect also other different organizations and to help each other.
Hmm. Jakob also has a question. How would the perfect situation for the Roma population in Europe look like?
Oh,
What legislative? Yeah, there's quite a lot of questions, but maybe we could, start with this. Yeah, how do you think what would be the perfect situation for the Roma population in Europe?
Maybe firstly, not having anti-Gypsyism or discrimination, and to have a really good political representation. Also, all the Romani kids and youth to be in schools and universities with other communities and not have segregation, definitely not having segregation, isolation, discrimination, and better political representation. I think that would be the best situation from starting from education to political involvement and representation, to participate
Mm.
in every area and in every level.
Mm. I was wondering, because you really have a lot of roles as an activist on different levels for different communities, but also working straight on the grassroots levels. I just was wondering who encouraged you, maybe, or was it important for you to have kind of positive role models in your life?
Of course, the positive role models are, I think, one of the main things that is tending to involve other youth and other people to do the same. For me
Mm.
personally, when I started in my early age in high school to be a volunteer and to be more active, so I met a lot of young Roma people who are in different universities, who are in different organizations, and when I met them, so I thought that if they are doing the same, so I can do the same, and I can be
Mm.
I also can be a good role model, and I can be an example to others. So that's the thing that inspired me most actually. And yeah, it's really good when you can relate yourself with someone that you want to be, and that you can have a close role model to yourself. Yeah.
And then probably also immediately pass it on and act as a role model for someone else as well.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any other questions that someone would like to ask? Otherwise, I would add one from myself as well. But in the meantime, you're very much welcome to ask what you wish to know more. But my question was because we see, I'm sorry, it's going to be related to COVID again. Unfortunately, this is the hot topic, we would say, but we are seeing that a lot of minority youth not being able, to connect in their own youth organizations, to meet, to kind of nurture their identity. So I was wondering, how do you, as someone with a strong minority identity, actually keeps this alive through this crisis that we have at the moment, when we are not able to almost meet with the representatives of our own community?
So the world now is online. Everything is happening online. So definitely online activism also is possible. Actually, I've tried to stay connected with all the Roma youths that I know from our volunteering network, also with a lot of friends who are activists. And also during the pandemic situation, we were um, we were seeing what is going on with our communities outside, but also how is the media showing the situation, and also like writing some reports and um, making discussions with each other about what we can do now, or when we see a hate speech online, or discrimination, including from a people or other groups. But definitely, you can stay connected online. So that's the way that I did it. And also, I made a few videos with the Schwarzkopf Foundation who are informative and who are actually encouraging other Roma youth to stay active, and stay connected with their communities, because yeah, the situation was really hard to meet each other and support each other in person. Also in the volunteer network that I'm part of, we have youth who are now in last year in high school, so they're preparing themselves to go to university. So we were in touch all the time, and communicating, because it was really important to support each other during this process also. So everything can happen online now.
You also were mentioning media and how it can have an impact on especially young members of the community. And Mailis is actually connecting to that as well. Do you, as a community, so Roma community, do they struggle a lot? Do you struggle a lot with fake news and the media representation?
That's a really good question, and related with the COVID-19 situation, because during the whole pandemic situation, there were a lot of fake news about Romani people, about other communities, but especially against Romani people. Some of even political representatives were blaming Roma for spreading the virus. And yeah, a lot of fake news, a lot of hate messages, and the media was contributing for it. Yeah, unfortunately, we had a lot of cases where the media was spreading fake news about Romani people, and also the attention of the media, of the televisions and online. In online media, it was most of the time on the Roma people as a critical, or there is a high risk to spread the virus. And also
Mm-hmm.
we had here the Romani settlements were closed because
Mm-hmm.
there were a few cases, but other places where Romani people are not living, and there were also people who were infected, so they weren't closed. So there was quite a visible discrimination during the pandemic situation.
Mm. I attended a webinar a few days ago of David Donaldson, a Scottish traveler, and his organization. And he was actually expressing this as well, how society kind of, closes eyes when it says, using the G word here, are stealing, But if someone would change the minority group then to, I don't know, Jewish, for example, then people would react. But when it's talk about the Roma people, then society is not as eager to react on some of the things. So it's also a very good exercise for us as well. Change the name group maybe of on the headlines in the media, and then see if you're reacting in the same way or not. But Jedwina is also asking related to critical thinking, for example, quite important and nowadays especially from the side of young people as well. So can you name some sources, for example, where there will be a possibility to find reliable stories or news? Is it something also that you look out for, or?
Maybe we have some Bulgarian resources, but maybe as an international European Roma Rights Center and
Mm-hmm.
European and also Roma National Movement. So there are good resources that you can find more information which is available and yeah, related this topic.
Mm-hmm. So going directly to the source and reactions of the Roma civic society and the NGOs
Yeah,
related to that. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? But maybe I have, if it doesn't pop up anything, I was just wondering in regards to the fake news as well, how would you say it's actually, reflecting on young people, young Roma that are, watching television and seeing this kind of portrait that the society or media has kind of came up with about them, and having this constantly repeated. How do you think, what are the effects for the Roma young people and for the Roma community as well?
I think actually it's really hard to understand what is happening, because even
Mm,
if you are an active Roma youth, if you are connected and you're working for your community, you can actually allow these stereotypes to influence
mm-hmm,
even on your on us, because they're so strong, and they're represented in a really specific and different way that can influence. So even if you're part of the community, so you can think about it as that is true sometimes. Of course, it depends how involved you are in the community. But if you are not really involved in the community, not working, sometimes you really can think about it, that is true.
mm-hmm,
Also, other side of it, that maybe it's reflecting on mental health of young Roma people, because sometimes we feel that okay, we are taking actions, okay, we are doing this and that, and we are working really
mm-hmm,
strong, but so there is what is happening out there, and how the media is representing us, and how the people see us. So that can reflect on our mental health and on our motivation also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is what you're also very much underlying, how important it is that we do have Roma people in different sectors of society doing different jobs and actually, having this self-representation everywhere, not only in governmental, positions, but
Definitely.
actually also in the media. Mm.
Yes, definitely in the media and every other area where
Mm-hmm.
yeah, people are working and represented.
Okay, I see no other questions at the moment. Um, I do understand this has been quite a lot, maybe information, and
Yeah.
if your listeners are interested, you are always welcome to broaden your knowledge on the minority topics and specifically on Roma rights. Either at YEN events or Pirana Mensa events or Ternipe events, ergo any big European and strong Roma youth movement. At this point, I would like to first thank the participants. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for taking the time to listen, to educate yourself. Thank you for broadening your perspectives. I do hope that today we have given you some food for thought, and I would encourage you that after you close the browser to take a few minutes before diving into other responsibilities of the evening to take a step back, to actually self-reflect, be also self-critical. This is important for your growth, and see what you have done maybe as an individual to promote minority rights, and what have you done to give space and amplify Roma youth voices, because at this point, with what's happening in the world, we can all, I think, agree that we can do better, always, and all of us can do better. And I would like to thank Mariya, you as well, for taking the interest and for taking your time to join us for this hour and broaden our minds today and give us some insight into the subject. Before we go, are there any last messages that you would like to share with us?
Oh, firstly, thank you so much again for inviting me for this webinar. I want to say that to all young people to be more active, more critical, and to fight for all communities because we have the same problems and we have to support each other.
Thank you so much, Mariya, for this important message at the end. If you stay with us for the next few seconds, we will have a bit of self-promotion now. So an outro of this is that for those who are from our network, you are very much invited to take part in the discussions rounds that will take part next week's on Thursday, 18th of June. Link to the event will be on the webinar event page, but also check our website and Facebook. It's an opportunity for you to actually come together in small groups. If your friends are already bored of you, talking about how this COVID-19 has infected you, now this reflection groups and discussion groups are actually perfect for you to come and share your personal experiences with other people, connect with other communities and minorities, and see how you have been impacted by the corona crisis. Besides that, reminder, we will have in 2 weeks another webinar. I will not disclaim the guest yet, but keep your eyes peeled to see who will be. And the last thing is that next week we are having an online e-training with one of our great trainers, Jihan, from the 19th and 21st of June. So it will be a 3-day training and not just a 1-hour webinar. And please do register. All of the informations are on homepage and our Facebook. Also, any kind of feedback, questions, write in the comments under the event. If you have, any remarks or any big topics that you would still like to discuss, let us know, and write also to our office if you want, at office@yani.org. You can still follow us on all social media except TikTok, but maybe we will be persuaded in the future to also join. Thank you, everyone. Again, thank you, Mariya. It was lovely having you here, and hopefully we will be able to fight continuously for the Roma and minority rights, not only in the online space, but also in the physical space. Thank you. I will stay here for the next few seconds, and you just log out whenever you want. And if someone else wants to still write a comment, you're very much welcome to. Otherwise, stay safe, everyone.
Right.